Me and my mother have never been close, but I never thought that we would go head to head with each other for my father's affection. I caught my mom doing something, and she told me if I tell my father, she's going to ruin my life and she will never let me see him again. I don't know what to do. Let me ask you guys what you would do. I usually use my main account here to participate in anime and gaming subs. I've lurked onto this, but I've never really had a reason to post until now. I can't believe the things that have happened today, and I need help understanding it and figuring out what to do next. Everything that went down is pretty life-changing for a 15-year-old, I think, and I don't have anybody that I can reach out to or talk to about it without risking my safety and my home life. I would consider talking to the school counselor or a teacher, but I'm from a pretty small town where everybody knows everybody, and word would spread pretty quickly. I don't fully trust most of the adults here. They always seem to be waiting for any kind of drop of gossip that they can dish out to their friends. It all began this morning. I usually do my entire morning routine by myself. I wake up, shower, get dressed, pack myself a sandwich for my midday break, make and eat breakfast, and then walk to school. My mother is a stay-at-home wife. She doesn't really do much when it comes to helping us out and spends most of her time lounging around the house and day drinking. The only thing she's consistent in is keeping the house neat and tidy, but that's only because she loves having her friends over and would hate to tarnish her image with a dirty home. When I wake up and leave for school, she's still fast asleep, in bed. I don't think she even wakes up until noon, whereas I'm out of the house by 7:30. My mother and I aren't very close. She's always made me feel like a burden and treats me like a maid when my father's not home. She makes me wait on her, refill her drinks, cook dinner often, and during her drunken stints, she's told me that I've ruined her life and that her body never looked the same after giving birth to me. And that she wishes I was never born, so she would not be tied down and dependent on my father. She has said that I've stolen her golden years from her. To put it simply, I hate her. I don't like being around a woman, and I just avoid her as much as I can. I stay out of the house as late as possible when my father isn't home, and I often spend the nights at friends' house whenever I can. The only reason I tolerate that woman is because my father loves her. I've seen the way that he treats her, and the way his smile lights up when he sees her. I wish he could see how he deserves so much better because she doesn't give him even an ounce of the love he gives her. My father's a well-known surgeon and works at the top hospital in our town. He's also the only surgeon in our area who specializes in his specific medical field, which results in him spending most of the time on call or in the hospital. He's often called in at odd hours for emergencies and regularly goes out of state on work trips that last anywhere from a few days to a week or two. My father's quite possibly the best person in my life. When he's home, it's always fun and happy. If he's around when I wake up, he'll make me breakfast and prepare some extra special snacks just for me to take to school with me. I love my father dearly. He always uplifts me, encourages me, and guides me in the right direction. He inspired me to invest in extracurricular activities and helped me decide what I wanted to pursue in the future. Today was one of the days when my father was on call at the hospital. I'd overslept, so I rushed through my routine, gulped down some milk straight from the carton, and basically ran to school. Once there, I realized that something was very wrong. I don't know if the milk was expired or the bread was moldy, but I spent half of my first 2 lessons in the bathroom throwing up. When my illness showed no signs of easing up, I went to the school nurse, who wrote me an exemption slip, and I headed home halfway through the school day. I didn't see any point in informing anyone, as my mother was probably still asleep and my father was far too busy for me to disrupt his workday. When I get home, the front door was unlocked. At first I panicked, worried that we've been robbed. Then I saw the hazard trail of clothing hazardly thrown across the floor from our front door to the staircase, and I wondered if my father had gotten home early, and if my parents had decided that now was a good time as any to, prove their love or whatever, and choose to be careless about it since I wasn't due home from school for another few hours. Well, I soon realized that this was unlikely, see. My father's car was not in the driveway, and the clothes strewn over the floor did not look like anything that he'd ever be caught dead wearing. Hesitantly, I took my phone out and began to record. I made sure to capture the clothes on the floor before I began climbing the stairs. There were sounds coming from the top of the stairway, and I realized that my parents' bedroom door was wide open. As quietly as I could, and preparing for the worst, I went up to the doorway, my phone still capturing everything. There was my mother, butt naked on top of a man that was definitely not my father, in my father's bed. Questions immediately began to race through my head. How long has this been going on? Did my father know? How would I tell him? How could she do this to him? And my anger starts to bubble up as I lost it. My own thoughts were everywhere, and I didn't notice that man under my mother stop her as he realized I was there. I lowered my phone just as my mother turned to meet my gaze. I can't imagine what the expression she saw on my face might have been, but she looked mad. As my mother dragged a quilt around her and climbed off the man to approach me, I recognized him as our neighbor, Tyler, who had just recently come back from college and was definitely far younger than my mother. He looked embarrassed as he hurried to cover himself, and my phone, while pointing at the ground, was still recording as my mother came to stop in front of me and grabbed my arm hard, with her nails digging into my skin. I prayed she hadn't noticed my phone.
If you say so much of a word to your father about this, I'll make sure I get full custody of you, and you're never going to see your beloved father again.
You have no proof of any of this.
And if the court always sides with struggling mothers, so you better keep your mouth shut. Now, I don't know why you're here during a school day, and I don't care. Go to your room and stay there until I come to talk to you. Get out.
She then proceeded to turn back to Tyler, who was lazing around in my father's bed, and smiled at her impishly. Then she shut the door in my face, and I assumed they got back to what they were doing because they stayed locked in there for the next 2 hours while I lay in my room, fighting to grasp what I've just uncovered and simultaneously struggling with abdominal pain, and nursing the wounds her nails made in my arm. I checked the video I filmed to make sure it was clear that the man in the bed was not in fact my father. Well, before making multiple backups on it and various cloud storage platforms, I then hid it in my gallery in case my mom tried to check my phone, and just waited quietly in bed for her to come and check up on me. But by the time she stormed into my room, I'd fallen asleep while trying just to cope with the pain. She recounted her previous threats and then asked me why did I come home. Well, I told her, and she told me to sleep it off, and that I should have just kept what I know to myself when father comes home tonight if I want to continue having my life. Then she asked me to pour her a glass of wine and stay out of her hair because her friends would be over very, very soon. Guys, I was absolutely seething. The woman had no respect for anybody and somehow convinced me to constantly just bend to her will. I want to see her suffer. I really, really do. So I gave her the wine before locking myself in my room and wondering what do I do while I type this out to everybody. I love my dad more than anything, and I want nothing more than for him to be out of this terrible marriage with my mother. Well, my monster, I should say. But I'm terrified that if I tell him and he takes the steps to leave, she can do what she threatened and just never let me see him again. I can't risk that. My father is my lifeline in this godforsaken house, and I get sad when he's gone for just a few days. I can't imagine not seeing him at all. I don't want to take the risk, but I also don't want to hide something so big from him. He deserves better. He deserves to be loved and happy, and honestly, I deserve better as a mother too. Wow. Does anyone have any advice on the legal aspects of this? Can she really do everything that she threatened me with, or does my dad actually have ground to stand on that'll let me stay with him if he chooses to divorce her? I'd be grateful for any help or advice. Thank you. Will update when I can.
Update number 1.
Hey everyone, it's been a little over a week since that nightmarish incident, I wrote about last time. My dad came home that night and went through his usual routine of greeting me and giving my mom a loving smack on the lips and making me physically wince. I couldn't watch her pretend to give him affection after what I knew without wanting to physically pull all her hair out. We sat down for dinner as a family does upon my dad's insistence and ate the Chinese takeout he picked up on his way home from work. I was silent for most of the part and refused to make eye contact with, well, anybody. Which is very unlike me because I'm always excited to get a chance to sit down and talk with my dad. He tried asking me questions, but I gave him the shortest responses I could. I feel so guilty about behaving normally with him and not telling him what I know. It feels like I'm somehow hiding something from him or lying to him. After several attempts talking to me, he gave up and let me eat in silence while he spoke to my mom about a family vacation they were planning for my summer. Well, my mom was all smiles and sugar, and it made my blood boil. I wondered if she was just with him so she could fund her lifestyle while she drank, gossiped, and slept with the whole town. I hated her so much at that moment, and I was prepared to throw my fork at her, but I did my best to control it. After dinner, I helped my dad clean up while my mother drank yet another glass of wine. Then he came to my room to help me with my homework. Shockingly, my mother joined us too, something she's never done in my entire life. I'm sure she just wanted to eavesdrop and keep an eye to avoid letting us spend time together alone, out of fear of me ratting her out about her affair. I let my dad help me for a while before citing the fact that I still felt quite sick and very tired as an excuse to get them to leave me alone so I could sleep. In reality, I spent the night tossing and turning, wondering what I could have possibly done in the situation that I was in. I missed out on a lot of time I could have been spending with Dad, and it simply bummed me out. But what else could I do? I didn't have it in me to look him in the eyes without immediately telling him everything I knew. This was how it went for, the next few days, before my father left for a business trip. I was grateful for the time to decide what I wanted to do, whereas my mother used to continue to make subtle threats and treat me as badly as she legally could without my father finding out. Yesterday, my father got back from his business trip late into the night. He popped his head into my room, and when he saw that I was awake, he told me he was looking forward to our weekly Sunday daddy-daughter brunch. And he missed the last one as he was out of town. I told him that I'd be ready and waiting, and then he kissed my forehead and said goodnight, before turning the lights off and leaving. I spent a good portion of the night crying with guilt and uncertainty. I was sure that I was going to tell my father everything at brunch because I could not keep it inside anymore. But I was genuinely so worried about my mother taking me away from him and cutting him out of my life that I had several panic attacks throughout the night and spent most of it shaking beneath my quilt. I think I probably fell asleep like that. The next morning, my father drove us to brunch after about an hour of my mother doing her best to persuade him to cancel the plan so that we could all do something together as family instead. She really did her best and tried to get me to say something as well, but I didn't have much energy to say anything, so I just shrugged and soldiered through her angry stares. My father promised that we'd make it quick, and then we would come and do something with her before piling me into the car and leaving. So we get to the restaurant, which is a beautiful cottage-style outdoor venue, and got seated at our favorite spot overlooking a stream. The hostess recognized us and engaged in cheerful conversation with us as usual, but I could barely even muster a smile. My father, well, he was as sociable as ever, greeting everybody he knew, which was most of the restaurant, before turning his attention to me once we were seated. As they bought our drinks and food out, my father got straight to the point and told me that I did not seem like myself and had not for the last week or so. The poor man asked me if he did something wrong or somehow upset me. He asked if he thought that, well, he didn't spend enough time with me and if I wanted him to cut back on his hours at the hospital or reduce his out-of-state trips. I couldn't do much other than shake my head as I stuffed food into my mouth to avoid speaking, even though I didn't have much of an appetite. It took some begging and self-blaming from my father before I decided to share that something that's been weighing on me for a while. He asked me what it was and once more asked if he had done something wrong. I just shook my head and took a few minutes to muster up the courage and gather my thoughts before I started to speak. With that, the dam was unleashed. I broke down in tears as I told him what I saw on that day. My mother's threats and the hell that I've been going through in my own head for the last week. Thankfully, there was nobody close enough to our table to notice or hear what I had to say, because I'm sure that if there was, it would immediately be the absolute talk of the town. I think I spent a good half hour just sobbing in my father's arms as he silently held me. I apologized for hiding it from him for so long and promised that I wanted to tell him, but was terrified that my mother may actually have the power to take me away from him. He said nothing, but I could see the distress in his eyes as they welled up with tears, and he struggled to contain it. When I finally managed to calm down, he wiped off my tears, gave me several tissues for me to blow my nose in, and then began to speak. The first thing he told me was that he knew. He had apparently always known. He had found bits and pieces of evidence that something was going on every once in a while over the last few years, but had never had any ongoing concrete evidence or proof or witnessed anything. My mom was always careful, because he didn't have any solid proof. He could never do or say anything. He tried asking her once, but she denied everything while turning the tables and asking him, how could he ever dare accuse her of something so heinous? He then asked me if I had any proof of what I saw, because it could be our key in court to keep giving me custody. Well, I went ahead and showed him the video I recorded, and I swear I could visibly see the heartbreak on his face as he tried his best to hold himself together for my sake. He exhaled sharply when he saw Tyler in his bed, with his wife on top of him, and he swore quietly under his breath. However, when he heard what Mom said to me in the clip, and heard me tell her, she's hurting me, his pain immediately turned into straight-up anger. He told me that my video was a gold mine, but asked if I was sure that I wanted him to confront her and separate from her. He told me that even though he had a feeling about her infidelity, he never did anything because he didn't want to tear our family apart and wanted me to have a mother in my life. I assured him that I have no love for her, and she was barely even a mother to me anyways. I finally shared with him how she treated me when she wasn't around, and he was livid. I told him that she was cruel, cold, unkind, and there was not a good thing to her personality. I told him I did not understand why he fell in love with her, and why he chose someone like her, because every time I looked at her, I only saw the devil. I hated her, and have wanted nothing more than to get her out of my life for years, and promised him that I would be much happier if our family was just living in peace. He was happy to hear it and told me that the video was perfect to get the judges on his side, and he would rest assured to win full custody of me, while that horrible woman would never have another chance to lay a finger on me or mistreat me again. I was so grateful to have been able to finally share everything with my father. It felt like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders, and we spent the rest of the day together before heading home with a plan. When we got back, we behaved completely normal with my mom, who eyed us suspiciously and was tense for a good half hour before she was convinced that nothing changed, and I had not told father anything. I think more than being worried about her family falling apart, she was worried about her image and reputation in town being tarnished. And she was worried about losing her meal ticket, my father, who she'd been using to leech off of and found her terrible lifestyle for years. My father promised me he would set up cameras around the common areas of the house for the sake of my safety, and would spend a month building his case with his lawyer before he served my mom. 1 month. One more month of this, and hopefully I'll be free of her rotten crutches, and I can't wait for her to be out of my life. I'll finally be able to wander freely around my home without any fear, instead of being locked up in my room all the time. I'll be able to come and go as I please instead of having to follow her orders and avoid coming home when my father isn't around. I'm typing this right now in my bed, and I'm so excited for a future without my mother that I can barely even sleep. Things are starting to look up, and I can hardly wait. Update number 2. Today was a very, very hard day. Well, it's been a little over a month since my last post, and just as promised, my mom was served divorce papers in the mail. My dad was at work, and she was sitting on the couch waiting for me when I got home from school.
I barely had the time to take my shoes off when she pushed me against the wall and waved the papers in my face, asking me if I know what these were. I shook my head, even though I had a feeling, and promised I had no idea. She shoved me around some more and told me that they were divorce papers signed by my father. She then asked me if I've told him what I've seen a month ago, and I swore I didn't, repeatedly, but she refused to believe me, and then finally she slapped me across the face so hard that I fell down and her nails left scratches on my cheek. She spit at me and told me that she would teach me a lesson, that even if I snitched, we had no proof, that she would fight for every dime in court and win because they always sympathize with the jobless, single mother whose husband grew tired of her because she had gotten a little older and didn't look like she once did back in the day. She promised me that she would make me regret messing with her life when she got custody of me. She told me that she would lock me in my room and treat me as the equivalent of a servant and nothing more, and that I would never see my father ever again after that court date and after the divorce was finalized. Well, I got to my feet and ran to my room once she finished speaking. I called my father and told him what happened and that she had received the papers, and he asked me if I was okay. I told him I was going to hide out in my room until he got home. He promised me it would all be over soon. When he got home last night, I heard him tell my mother to pack her things and leave his house until the divorce was done. I heard her try to sweet-talk him and convince him that I was a liar, but he told her I never said anything to him and asked what she was even talking about. She covered up asking why he was filing for divorce, and he told her that she would find out soon enough and that she needed to leave and have no contact with him until the court date. I heard her sob, plead, break down outside my room, and waited patiently until I heard the front door shut and watched from the window as she got into a taxi with her suitcase and left. I already feel like I can breathe easier with my mom gone. My dad found me shaking in my room after she left and checked the wounds on my face. He told me that the camera in the living room captured her attacking me, and it would be the final nail in the coffin for the court session, which would be 100% leaning towards the judge in his favor for full custody. He apologized for not realizing that she was verbally and physically abusing me and mistreating me, and for leaving me in her care for so long. He said that he should have never trusted her. For the first time in a long time, my mom is not home, and I feel like I will be able to sleep easy. The atmosphere in the house changed the instant she left, and it feels like she's gone for good. I hope she never comes back. I hope she loses everything. I'll update you guys once the divorce is finalized and the battle is over. Hopefully everything goes as planned and my mom will leave us alone for good. Update number 3. Hello. It's been close to a year since my last update and I shared my story with you guys. Sorry it took me so long, but every time I planned to post an update, new information would come to light and it would bring its own drama with it. Let me start from the beginning. After my dad served my mom and kicked her out of our home, she went to stay with her parents for a while. I thought we had seen the last of her until she showed up at my school to pick me up, and once when my day was done, I was forced to get into her car with her. She pinched my arm and essentially dragged me, and then she spent an hour driving around with me trying to convince me to speak for her in court. She told me she already guaranteed to win because of her position and all this, but that she wanted me to speak in her favor just to take her case to the next level. She told me that if I did this, she'd give me my visitation rights to Dad twice a month at the very least. Thankfully, my father had my location on his phone, and when he noticed me getting further away from town and not reaching home, he put 2 and 2 together and called my mom, telling her to drop me home at once before he gets the cops involved. Well, she dropped me off and told me to think about her offer before leaving. One day, we went to court. My mother was shocked by all the evidence my father was able to provide in terms of her infidelity and mistreatment of me. When the judge asked me who'd I prefer to stay with, I was clear in the fact that my dad was the only choice I would ever make over and over, and my dad won custody by a landslide. And my mom received nothing out of him due to her just straying from the marriage. She also had to pay my father alimony and reparations, and neither of which she had because I know for a fact that she hasn't worked a day since she had me. So I have a feeling she has a long struggle ahead of her in terms of finding a job and paying off all the money that she owes. After the divorce was finalized, the news went public, and her reputation in our town was tarnished so badly that she eventually left town and moved to another state in shame. Her fall from grace was a delight to watch. Once it was out that my father divorced her because of her infidelity, the news spread like wildfire and the town began to gossip. It turns out that not only did she start sleeping with Tyler while he was very much underage, but she also slept with several other young boys in our town. Wrecked the marriage of a reputed college professor whose husband was seduced by my mother, and even slept with her best friend's husband. Unbeknownst to her, my mother could not show her face in town without everyone looking down on her and whispering behind her back.
I mean, to be honest with you guys, I don't know what the mom was thinking. Did she think that eventually she was going to get caught? Or do you think she was completely oblivious to it the whole time? Even though she was sleeping with much younger aged men, some of them even boys, and underage. It didn't really go into the details about if she ever got charged for that, but we do know she lost custody of OP, she had to pay alimony. I mean, everything turned upside down for her just because she wanted to go out and cheat, all on her man, and then hold her own, daughter blackmailed for whatever she saw. I want to know what you guys think about this story. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every single day. And if you guys enjoy these daily animated stories, go ahead, subscribe to the channel because there's plenty more to come. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and of course, just remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.